By the time the third child disappeared, the city stopped blaming the river. Greyhaven had always lived with water like other cities lived with weather. The River Vey cut through its center in black twisting channels, carrying cargo ships by day and fog by night. Every bridge dripped rust. Every alley smelled faintly of wet stone and engine oil. Even the cathedral pillars sweated moisture in winter. People here learned early that water took things. Shoes, coins, dogs, sometimes drunks. But children were different, especially when they vanished from locked rooms. Lena Morkant stood under the flickering hallway lamp of Building 47 and listened to Mrs. Arden sob through the apartment door. "I looked away for 1 minute," the woman whispered. 1 minute. Police officers moved quietly around the tiny flat behind her, opening cabinets, checking windows that had already been checked 3 times. One officer stood beside a bathtub filled with murky water that smelled strongly of algae. Lena ignored them all. Her attention stayed on the floor. Wet footprints, small, barefoot, leading from the child's bedroom toward the bathroom, and stopping there, not fading, stopping, as if the child had simply ceased to exist. Detective Harrow noticed her staring. "You're doing that thing again," he muttered. Lena didn't look up. "What thing?" "The haunted look. I always look haunted." Fair point. Harrow was tall, exhausted, and permanently smelled like cheap cigarettes despite the citywide ban. He leaned beside the bathroom doorway and rubbed sleep from his eyes. "You seeing something I'm not?" Lena crouched beside the final footprint. The water around it trembled slightly, not from movement, from vibration. Tiny ripples crossed the puddle in slow circles. She frowned. "You hear that?" Harrow listened. Rain tapped the windows. Pipes groaned somewhere deep in the walls. Then, very faintly, a bell. One hollow note. Far below them. Harrow stiffened. "No." Lena slowly stood. "You heard it too." "That's impossible." She almost laughed. Greyhaven was built on impossible things. Half the city rested above sealed underground districts abandoned after the flood fever years. Old train tunnels, submerged neighborhoods, forgotten pumping stations. The lower levels had supposedly been sealed decades ago after structural collapses killed hundreds. Officially, nobody lived beneath Greyhaven anymore. Officially. The bell rang again. Longer this time. Mrs. Arden lifted her head sharply. "You heard that?" Nobody answered. Lena walked into the bathroom. The mirror above the sink was covered in condensation, though the room was cold. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling vent. Tap, tap, tap. The bathtub water shifted suddenly. Not splashing, turning, like something beneath it had rolled over in sleep. Harrow grabbed her arm. "Lena." Too late. The water bulged upward. A child's face surfaced silently from the blackness. Pale skin, closed eyes, dark hair floating weightlessly. Mrs. Arden screamed. The officers stumbled backward. But Lena couldn't move, because the face in the tub wasn't the missing boy. It was her brother, Elias, dead 16 years. His eyes opened, river black, and his mouth moved. "Don't let them hear you." Then the water collapsed flat again. The bathroom lights exploded. Darkness swallowed the room. Someone shouted. Glass shattered somewhere down the hall. Then the emergency lights kicked in red. Breathing hard, Lena stared at the bathtub. Empty. Just water. Harrow's grip tightened painfully on her sleeve. "You saw that too." She nodded once. For the first time in years, Detective Harrow looked genuinely afraid. Outside, thunder shook the building. But beneath it came another sound. Hundreds of bells, ringing together underneath the city. 3 hours later, Lena sat alone in archive room C beneath Central Precinct, staring at a photograph she was not supposed to possess. Greyhaven, 1971, before the lower districts were sealed. Thousands of people standing knee-deep in floodwater, staring at the camera with blank expressions. Behind them, painted on a tunnel wall in white symbols, was the phrase, "The river remembers all names." Lena rubbed her eyes. No sleep, too much coffee, too many ghosts. The room door creaked open. Harrow entered carrying 2 paper cups. You look terrible. So do you. Thanks. He handed her coffee and shut the door behind him carefully. Neither spoke for a moment. Finally he said, I checked the building maintenance logs. And the plumbing beneath Building 47 connects to restricted tunnels. Lena looked up sharply. Restricted how? Harrow slid a folder across the desk. Old engineering maps. Stamped closed by municipal order. Most of the lower routes had been blacked out with thick ink. Except one label. Bell Chamber District. Lena's stomach tightened. I thought those tunnels collapsed. So did everyone else. Thunder rolled again overhead. The lights flickered. For 1 second, Lena saw movement reflected in the archive room window. Not inside the room. Behind the glass. A figure standing ankle-deep in water. Watching her. She spun around. Nothing there. Harrow noticed anyway. You okay? No. Good. Means I'm not crazy either. He sat opposite her and lowered his voice. My grandfather used to talk about the bells. Lena blinked. What bells? The ones under the city. Said they rang before every flood. You never mentioned this. Because he was drunk most of the time. Harrow stared at the maps uneasily. He said Greyhaven wasn't built beside the river. Another flicker. The lights dimmed blue this time. It was built on top of something buried inside it. Lena slowly leaned back in her chair. Every instinct in her body told her to walk away from this case. That instinct sounded exactly like fear. And fear, she had learned long ago, was usually pointing toward truth. She reached for the oldest map in the folder. Most of the lower districts had been erased from public records after the flood quarantines. Entire neighborhoods removed from city archives like they had never existed. But one tunnel line remained visible. A maintenance route leading directly beneath the river. Toward a structure marked only with a symbol. A circle crossed by vertical lines. Lena froze. She knew that symbol. She had seen it carved into the wooden floorboards beneath her childhood home. The night Elias died. A knock hit the archive door. 3 slow taps. Harrow frowned. You expecting someone? No. Another 3 knocks. Then silence. Harrow stood carefully and rested his hand near his sidearm. The door creaked open by itself. Nobody stood outside. Just darkness in the corridor. And water. A thin stream of black river water slowly crawling beneath the doorway toward them. The overhead lights began humming violently. Then came the sound again. Bells. Closer now. Not beneath the city anymore. Inside the building. Lena stared at the spreading water. In its reflection, dozens of human shapes moved silently below the surface. Watching. Waiting. And somewhere among them, her dead brother smiled. The water stopped moving the instant the building lost power. Darkness swallowed archive room sea-hole. Not ordinary darkness. This felt thick. Wet. Alive. Lena heard Harrow draw his pistol. Stay behind me. She almost told him not to bother. A gun felt meaningless against whatever had looked at her through the river water. The emergency lights failed to activate. Only the bells remained. Closer now. Slow. Massive. Each note rolled through the building like something breathing under the floorboards. The black water creeping beneath the archive door suddenly reversed direction. Not flowing inward anymore. Flowing back into the hallway. As if retreating. Harrow swallowed hard. I really hate this city. Lena stood slowly. Something about the bells tugged at her memory in painful fragments. Childhood fever dreams. Wet footsteps outside her bedroom. Her mother locking every window during storms while whispering prayers Lena never understood. Then Elias standing at the riverbank days before he died. If the bells ever ring for you, don't answer them. She had laughed at him back then. Now her skin crawled. A faint glow appeared down the corridor. Blue-white. Moving. Harrow raised the pistol immediately. Who's there? No answer. The light drifted closer. Not floating. Carried. Then a figure emerged from the darkness. An old woman in a raincoat. Barefoot. Holding a storm lantern. Water dripped steadily from her sleeves onto the tile floor. Lena recognized her instantly. Sister Agnes, caretaker of St. Mercy Cathedral, officially retired, unofficially feared by half the district. The old woman's cloudy eyes settled on Lena first. You took too long. Harrow blinked. Excuse me? Sister Agnes ignored him entirely. Her voice sounded ancient and scraped raw by salt air. The bells have started. That means they're awake. Lena stepped forward cautiously. Who's awake? The old woman looked genuinely confused. The drowned. Silence. Then another bell shook dust from the ceiling. Harrow exhaled sharply. Okay. No. Absolutely not. We're not doing mysterious cryptic cult dialogue tonight. Sister Agnes finally turned toward him. You should leave, detective. I'm not leaving her alone. You misunderstand. Agnes lifted the lantern slightly. I meant leave the city. The temperature in the corridor dropped sharply. Lena saw her own breath. Far away somewhere inside the precinct, people began screaming. Then came the sound of rushing water. Harrow cursed. What the hell was that? Agnes closed her eyes briefly. The lower gates opened. Lena grabbed the old woman's arm. What gates? Agnes stared directly into her face. The ones your father died trying to seal. The words hit like a physical blow. Harrow looked between them immediately. Lena, but she barely heard him. You knew my father? Everyone below knew Thomas Morcant. Below? Agnes nodded toward the floor. There are still cities under Greyhaven. Another scream echoed upstairs. Closer now. The building trembled violently. A burst pipe exploded somewhere nearby. Water surged across the hallway tiles. Harrow grabbed Lena's shoulder. We need to move now. But Agnes held up the lantern calmly. They won't come up yet. Lena stared at her. Who won't? The old woman hesitated. And for the first time since entering the corridor, she looked afraid. The listeners. The lights suddenly returned. Fluorescent panels flickered overhead. Everything looked normal again. Dry hallway. No black water. No screaming. Only Lena, Harrow, and Sister Agnes standing in silence. Harrow lowered the gun slowly. Did we all just hallucinate? No, Agnes whispered. Then every computer in archive room C-powered on simultaneously. Static flooded the speakers. Dozens of screens flickered with distorted camera feeds from around the city. Flood tunnels, subway platforms, maintenance shafts. Every feed showed water rising rapidly. And in each reflection, shapes moving beneath the surface. Human-shaped, too tall, too thin. Watching the cameras. A final monitor crackled alive near Lena. One single sentence appeared across the screen. She remembers you. The monitor exploded inward. Glass sprayed across the room. Harrow shoved Lena back just before the screen frame hit the wall beside her head. Then the building alarm system activated. Not evacuation alarms. Flood sirens. Deep mechanical horns roared through the precinct. Agnes turned immediately toward the stairwell. There's no time now. For what? Harrow shouted. To close the mouth. Lena's blood froze. What mouth? But the old woman was already moving. Rain hammered Greyhaven by the time they reached the streets. The city had changed. People crowded intersections staring toward the river in terrified silence. The water level was rising impossibly fast. Not spilling over the banks. Climbing. Like the river itself was standing up. Sirens screamed across distant districts. Helicopters crossed overhead toward the harbor. And beneath everything, bells. Constant now. The sound rolled up through sewer grates and storm drains. Lena followed Agnes through narrow side streets slick with rainwater. Harrow kept pace beside her. You trust this woman? He muttered. No. Great. Glad we're aligned. Ahead, St. Mercy Cathedral loomed over the district like a drowned giant. Massive stone walls blackened by centuries of storms. Its bell tower disappeared into fog. Lena had not entered the cathedral since Elias's funeral. She remembered her mother collapsing beside the altar while rainwater leaked through the ceiling onto the coffin. She remembered the bells ringing by themselves afterward. 113 times. Nobody could explain it. Agnes pushed open the cathedral doors. Warm candlelight spilled out. Inside smelled of incense and seawater. Dozens of people crowded the pews praying softly. Not homeless refugees. Not ordinary worshippers. These people watched Lena enter with expressions that unsettled her deeply. Recognition. Like they had been waiting for her. Harrow noticed too. I officially hate this. Agnes led them past the altar toward a locked iron gate behind the sanctuary. She removed a rusted key from beneath her sleeve. Lena stared at the symbol engraved on the gate. A circle crossed by vertical lines. The same mark from the old tunnel map. The same mark beneath her childhood floorboards. The same mark Elias had drawn repeatedly before he drowned. What is this place? Lena whispered. Agnes inserted the key slowly. This city was built by survivors. Survivors of what? The old woman looked at her sadly. Not what? The gate unlocked with a heavy metallic crack. Who? Cold air rushed upward from the darkness below. Not stale air. Ocean air. Deep ocean. Agnes lifted the lantern. Stone stairs spiraled downward beneath the cathedral into blackness. Far below, bells rang endlessly. Harrow peered into the abyss. Absolutely not. Agnes ignored him. She looked only at Lena. Your father failed because he tried to seal it alone. Lena's chest tightened. Seal what? The old woman's voice dropped to almost a whisper. The thing beneath the river that learns people. Silence. Rain hammered the cathedral roof overhead. Then, from somewhere far below the stairs, a child's voice echoed upward through the darkness. Soft, wet, familiar. Lena, her heart stopped. Elias. Harrow grabbed her arm immediately. That's not your brother. But Lena was already staring downward into the abyss. Because deep below the city, something had spoken with her dead brother's voice. And it sounded hungry. Lena should have turned back. Every sane instinct in her body screamed at her to run from the cathedral, from the bells, from the impossible voice rising out of the darkness below St. Mercy. But grief is a dangerous thing, especially old grief, because old grief waits. The moment Elias's voice echoed up the stairwell, something inside her cracked open that had stayed sealed for 16 years. Lena, soft, weak, like he was cold. Harrow tightened his grip on her arm. Do not go down there. She couldn't stop staring into the black. What if it's really him? It isn't. You don't know that. Yes? Harrow snapped, fear sharpening his voice. I absolutely do. Sister Agnes lifted the lantern higher. The thing below remembers the dead. Lena looked at her sharply. What does that mean? It hears mourning. Agnes's expression darkened. And it uses it. Another bell thundered beneath the cathedral. Dust drifted from the ceiling arches. Far upstairs, the worshippers began chanting softly in unison. Not prayers. Warnings. Harrow stepped backward from the stairwell. I'm calling this in. No signal reaches below, Agnes said. That sentence alone is enough for me to leave. But Lena was already moving. One step downward. Then another. The cold hit immediately. Not ordinary underground cold. This felt submerged. The deeper she descended, the louder the bells became. Ancient iron notes rolling through the stone staircase with enough force to vibrate in her ribs. Harrow swore under his breath and followed. Fantastic. We're all making terrible decisions together. Agnes came last, lantern swinging gently. The stairwell spiraled for what felt like forever. The sounds of the city disappeared above them. No rain, no sirens, only bells. And water. Somewhere below, massive waves crashed against stone. Then the stairs ended. Lena froze. The underground chamber stretched wider than the cathedral itself. An entire hidden district buried beneath Greyhaven. Stone bridges crossed black canals glowing faintly blue from submerged lanterns below the waterline. Towering pillars vanished upward into darkness. Ancient buildings leaned crookedly against each other like drowned ruins preserved underwater. And people lived here. Dozens moved silently across the bridges wearing heavy rain cloaks, carrying candles and baskets and rusted tools. None looked surprised to see Lena. Every single one stared at her with quiet recognition. Harrow looked horrified. How is this possible? Agnes answered calmly. Greyhaven has always had two cities. Lena barely heard her. Her attention stayed on the enormous structure at the district center. A circular iron gate built directly into the cavern floor, at least 50 meters wide, covered in chains thicker than ship anchors. And beneath the gaps in the metal, water moved, breathing, slow tides pushing upward from unimaginable depths below. Lena felt sick instantly, not from fear, from familiarity. Memories flickered violently through her mind. Her father returning home soaked in seawater night after night. Elias drawing circles crossed with lines on every wall in the house. Her mother crying whenever the bells rang. And one memory buried deeper than all the others. A voice whispering beneath her bed when she was 7 years old. You belong to the water too. She staggered slightly. Harrow caught her arm. Hey! I've been here before. Agnes nodded once. Yes. Lena stared at her. No. That's impossible. You were brought here after your brother drowned. The chamber seemed to tilt. What? Agnes's cloudy eyes softened. You don't remember because your father made certain you wouldn't. Lena's pulse thundered painfully now. My father brought me here? He was trying to protect you. From what? Nobody answered immediately. Then the water beneath the giant gate shifted. A deep metallic groan echoed through the chamber. One of the chains snapped. The sound exploded like cannon fire. People across the underground district stopped moving instantly. Silence fell. Then panic. The hidden citizens scattered across the bridges shouting warnings. Seal the lower routes. Move the children. It's waking. The water beneath the gate bulged upward violently. Something huge moved underneath. Not swimming. Turning. Harrow pulled his pistol immediately. Okay. Enough cryptic nonsense. Somebody tell me what the hell is under that gate. Agnes whispered one word. The listener. The chamber bells erupted all at once. Hundreds of deafening iron notes shook the cavern. And from beneath the gate, a sound answered. Not a roar. Not mechanical. A voice. Ancient. Massive. Wet. Speaking in dozens of overlapping human voices at once. Mara. Daniel. Mother. Help me. Lena's blood froze. Every voice belonged to someone dead. The people around the chamber collapsed to their knees, covering their ears. Harrow staggered backward, visibly shaken. What the hell is that thing? Agnes gripped her lantern tightly enough for her knuckles to whiten. It learns people through grief. Another chain snapped. The gate shifted upward slightly. Black seawater exploded through the opening. And with it came hands. Human hands. Pale fingers grasping through the bars from below. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Lena stumbled back horrified. They weren't attached to bodies. Just arms emerging from darkness beneath the gate, clawing desperately upward. One grabbed a fleeing man's ankle. He screamed. The arm yanked once. Violently. The man vanished through the bars instantly. Gone. Only blood remained floating on the water. Panic erupted. People ran in every direction across the bridges. The bells became unbearable now. Harrow fired twice at the grasping arms. The bullets punched through flesh, and the wounds immediately sealed shut with black water. Wonderful, he shouted. Absolutely wonderful. Agnes turned toward Lena urgently. Your father believed the gate could be locked permanently. Believed. He died before he could finish. Lena's breathing became shallow. No. They said he sabotaged the tunnels. Agnes stared at her sadly. They lied. The words shattered something inside her. Another memory surfaced. Her father kneeling before her, the night soldiers came for him. If the river ever calls your name, you must never answer it. At the time she thought he meant madness. Now she understood. The thing below the city knew names. And names mattered. The giant gate trembled violently. More chains snapped. The water below surged upward hard enough to flood the nearest bridges. Then the voice came again. Not from below. From directly behind Lena. Little sister. She turned slowly. Elias stood on the bridge 10 feet away, exactly as he looked before drowning at age 14. Wet dark hair, gray sweater, river water dripping from his fingertips. Except his eyes were completely black. Harrow raised the pistol instantly, but Lena grabbed his arm. Wait. Elias smiled sadly. You left me alone down there. Lena's throat tightened painfully. You're dead. Not entirely. The thing wearing her brother tilted its head slightly. Water dripped from its mouth when it spoke. It wants to meet you now. Lena forgot how to breathe. Elias stood motionless on the flooded bridge while chaos exploded around him. People screamed. Bells thundered. Water crashed against the iron gate hard enough to shake the cavern. But he remained perfectly still, watching her, waiting. Harrow kept the gun raised with both hands now, though Lena could see the tremor in his grip. That, he whispered carefully, is not your brother. Elias smiled faintly. You always hated me, detective. Harrow's face drained of color. How do you know who I am? The thing wearing Elias looked toward him slowly. Daniel Harrow, age 43, divorced, insomnia, regrets the call he ignored on October 17th. Harrow staggered back like he'd been punched. Lena stared at him sharply. What call? But Harrow couldn't answer, because Elias was already looking at Lena again. It knows things people drown with. The words came softly, almost kindly. Black water rippled beneath his bare feet without touching him. Agnes stepped in front of Lena immediately. Do not listen to it. Elias tilted his head. You still ring the bells every winter, Agnes. For the first time, the old woman looked genuinely terrified. The thing smiled wider. It remembers you too. Another chain snapped. The iron gate lurched upward several inches. A blast of freezing seawater surged through the chamber. People were swept screaming from the lower bridges into darkness below. The grasping hands dragged them under instantly. No bodies resurfaced. Harrow grabbed Lena hard. We are leaving. Now. But she couldn't move, because Elias was crying. Tears mixed with river water down his pale face. Lena, he whispered. It hurts down there. Her chest tightened violently. Every memory of him came flooding back at once. Sneaking onto rooftops together during storms. Sharing headphones beneath blankets. His nervous laugh before the river festival the night he disappeared. And afterward, the empty coffin. No body recovered. No explanation. Just bells ringing across Greyhaven for hours without anyone touching them. Lena took one step toward him. Agnes grabbed her wrist painfully. No, that's my brother. No, Agnes said again, harsher now. Your brother is dead. Elias looked wounded by the words. You told her the same lie they told you. Then the cavern lights failed. Darkness consumed everything except Agnes's lantern. And in that darkness, voices, hundreds of whispers surrounding them from every direction. Not random voices, recognizable ones, lost loved ones, dead children, mothers, friends. The listener was speaking through memory itself. Harrow went rigid beside Lena. A woman's voice whispered near his ear. Danny, why didn't you come home? He flinched violently. Lena heard her own mother crying somewhere in the dark. Elias's voice moved closer unseen. She waited for you at the river every night after I disappeared. Lena squeezed her eyes shut. Stop. But you stopped going. Stop. You left her alone with me. Stop. The whispers ceased instantly. Silence swallowed the cavern. Then the lantern light returned. Elias now stood directly in front of her. Too close. Lena could smell seawater and something older beneath it, rot hidden under deep ocean cold. His black eyes softened. You don't remember what really happened to me. Her heartbeat pounded painfully. What happened? Behind them, the iron gate groaned louder. More chains snapped loose into the floodwaters. The thing below was rising. Elias leaned closer. Your father pushed me into the river. Harrow's expression changed immediately. Agnes whispered, liar. But Lena's world had already tilted sideways. What? He thought it would stop hearing our family. No. He was wrong. The thing wearing Elias touched her cheek gently. The skin was ice cold. It chose you after me. A scream erupted across the cavern. One of the upper bridges collapsed entirely into the black water below. The hidden district was failing. Agnes turned desperately toward the fleeing citizens. We must reseal the chamber. How? Harrow shouted. Agnes looked toward Lena. Only Lena. The bloodline lock. Lena stared blankly. The what? Your family maintained the gate for generations. Another memory surfaced violently. Her father teaching her strange symbols as a child. Not letters. Warnings. Promises. Locks. You carry the final key. Elias's expression darkened instantly. No. The cavern trembled. The water beneath the gate surged upward in towering waves. And something enormous moved below the surface. Not human-shaped anymore. Far too large. Lena saw part of it briefly through the bars. A massive pale eye opening underwater. Watching her. The bells stopped all at once. Every sound vanished. Then the listener spoke directly into her mind. Not through ears. Inside thought itself. You came back. Lena collapsed to one knee gasping. Images exploded through her head. Cities underwater. People walking willingly into oceans. Ancient stone towers beneath black waves. And a truth so enormous her mind recoiled from it instinctively. The listener had not been trapped beneath Greyhaven. Greyhaven had been built to feed it. She looked up at Agnes in horror. You knew. Tears filled the old woman's eyes. We all knew. Those people upstairs. Offerings keep it sleeping. The words landed like knives. Lena stood shakily. You sacrificed people? We survived. You murdered children. Agnes's face broke. You think we had a choice? The cavern shook again. Huge cracks spread across the ceiling arches. Water poured through instantly. Harrow looked between them in disbelief. This entire city is insane. No. Elias whispered softly. He turned toward the rising gate. The city is hungry. The giant chains snapped simultaneously. All remaining restraints broke at once. The iron gate began lifting upward from below. Slowly. Something beneath it was opening the seal manually. People screamed and ran for the exits. Agnes dropped to her knees praying. Harrow backed away, pulling Lena with him. But she remained frozen. Because beneath the lifting gate, thousands of faces stared upward from the darkness. Not bodies. Only faces suspended beneath black water. Every person Greyhaven had ever lost. Eyes open. Watching. And among them, her father. Alive. His lips moved silently beneath the surface. Run. The face beneath the water was unquestionably Thomas Morcant. Older. Thinner. But alive. Lena stumbled toward the rising gate before Harrow caught her violently by the shoulders. No. That's my father. That thing is inside your head. But her father's mouth moved again beneath the black water. Run. Then the faces vanished. The entire surface below the gate erupted upward. Water exploded across the cavern bridges with enough force to hurl people screaming into stone walls. Lanterns shattered. Ancient support beams cracked overhead. And something began climbing out. Not quickly. Deliberately. Like it had waited centuries for this moment and no longer feared interruption. Lena saw fingers first. Long white fingers gripping the gate bars from below. Too many joints. Then arms. Then more arms emerging beside them. Dozens. The listener did not appear as one creature. It assembled itself from human shapes. Bodies fused together beneath black water, stretching upward into a towering mass of pale skin and drowned faces. Some screamed silently. Some smiled. Some whispered names in overlapping voices. Harrow stared in horror. Jesus Christ. No! Agnes whispered brokenly. Something much older. The creature kept rising. 7 feet. 10. 15. Its surface shifted constantly. Faces surfacing and sinking like bodies beneath ice. And every few seconds, one face became familiar. A lost parent. A dead spouse. A missing child. The thing was built from grief itself. The hidden citizens fled the underground district in panic now, abandoning bridges and market tunnels. Some dropped to their knees praying. Others threw themselves into side passages. Nobody tried fighting it, because everyone here already understood. The listener could not be killed, only fed. The massive creature turned slowly toward Lena. Hundreds of mouths opened together. You remember now. The voice shattered stone pillars nearby. Lena covered her ears screaming. Memories crashed through her mind violently. Not dreams. Not visions. Memories. Her father dragging her through these same tunnels when she was 8 years old. Flood alarms ringing overhead. Elias crying beside the gate. And Agnes shouting, "It only takes one." Lena staggered backward in horror. No! Elias had not drowned accidentally. Her father had chosen between his children. The listener shifted again. And suddenly Elias stepped free from the creature entirely. Not the imitation from before. This felt worse somehow. More real. He stood dripping seawater onto the bridge, staring at her with exhausted eyes. You know now. Lena shook uncontrollably. He sacrificed you. Elias nodded once. He thought it would stop the flood cycle. Harrow looked sick. Flood cycle? Agnes wiped tears from her face. Every 30 years the listener wakes hungry. The old woman looked toward the massive creature towering over the chamber. The city gives it people to keep it sleeping. Lena stared at her in disbelief. How many? Agnes said nothing, which was answer enough. Rage finally burned through Lena's fear. You built an entire city on murder. We built survival. Agnes snapped suddenly. Do you think Grey Haven was the only place? Silence hit hard. The old woman pointed upward toward the streets far above. The oceans are full of sleeping things, ancient things. Grey Haven simply remembers its bargain. The listeners' many faces smiled simultaneously. It enjoyed this conversation. Harrow slowly backed away toward Lena. We need to leave. Right now. There is nowhere left to go, Elias said quietly. Then the ceiling cracked open. River water burst through the cavern roof in colossal torrents. The underground district began collapsing. Stone bridges shattered beneath the pressure. Buildings slid into black canals. People disappeared screaming beneath floodwaters instantly. The listener remained unmoving amid the destruction. Like a king watching weather. Lena grabbed Harrow's arm. There has to be another way to seal it. Agnes hesitated, then nodded slowly. The original lock. Where? The old woman pointed beneath the giant gate. Everyone stared at her. Harrow laughed once in disbelief. You cannot be serious. The mechanism is below the chamber. Below the monster? Yes. Another bridge collapsed violently nearby. The listener turned its enormous shifting body toward them. It does not matter. Its voice now came from every direction simultaneously. The sea has already heard this city. Water surged upward around its body in spiraling waves. Above them, Grey Haven's emergency sirens suddenly died. Power across the city failed all at once. Darkness swallowed the cavern except for flashes of blue lightning from cracks in the ceiling. And in those flashes, Lena saw movement everywhere beneath the water. Not just the listener. Thousands of human forms rising through submerged tunnels below the city. The drowned were waking. Elias stepped closer to her. You need to go now. She stared at him painfully. Are you really him? For the first time, the thing wearing her brother looked uncertain. Then he smiled sadly. I remember loving you. The answer hurt more than a lie. The listener suddenly roared. Not in anger. Recognition. Its massive body turned upward toward the city above. Something new had entered Grey Haven. Something powerful. A deep mechanical sound echoed faintly through the collapsing tunnels. Engines. Harrow frowned. What is that? Then bright white searchlights pierced through cracks in the cavern ceiling. Moving. Scanning. Agnes went pale instantly. No! Lena looked up. What? The old woman whispered one word. Mainland. A deafening explosion shook the cathedral above. Dust and debris rained into the underground district. Then loudspeakers echoed faintly from somewhere overhead. "This is a federal containment order." Another explosion. Closer. "All survivors remain indoors." Harrow's face hardened immediately. "They quarantined the city." Agnes looked horrified beyond words. No. No, 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 they cannot see it." But it was too late. The listener had already turned toward the surface. And for the first time since rising from beneath the gate, smiled. Because something above Greyhaven had finally noticed it. And it wanted to be seen. The first missile hit the harbor district. Even this deep underground, the impact shook the cavern hard enough to split stone pillars apart. Dust burst through the ceiling in thick clouds. Somewhere above them, Greyhaven screamed. Not metaphorically. The city itself screamed. Metal twisted overhead. Sirens died mid-alarm. Thousands of car alarms began wailing at once somewhere far above the flooded streets. The listener lifted its massive shifting body toward the vibrations. Interested. Hungry. Searchlights swept through the cracks in the cathedral ceiling again. Military helicopters. Federal Blackhawks. Lena stared upward through the falling debris in disbelief. "They're bombing us?" Harrow's expression had gone rigid. "No, they're containing it." Another voice thundered through distant loudspeakers overhead. "All bridges have been sealed. Civilian evacuation is no longer possible. This is a level black containment event." Agnes closed her eyes like someone hearing a death sentence. "They know." Harrow rounded on her instantly. "Know what?" But before she could answer, the listener moved. The creature unfolded upward impossibly fast, body stretching and reforming as it surged toward the cavern ceiling. Hundreds of arms slammed into the cathedral foundations. Stone exploded outward. The underground district shook violently. Then came silence. One terrible second of silence. And above them, screaming, distant at first, then multiplying. The listener had reached the surface. Agnes whispered a prayer under her breath. "No, no, no." Harrow grabbed Lena hard. "We leave. Now." But Lena was staring upward. Because through the cracks in the ceiling she could hear people speaking in voices that weren't theirs. Children calling dead mothers. Husbands hearing lost wives. Every scream above ground carried the same shape. Recognition. The listener wasn't attacking the city. It was speaking to it. And Greyhaven was answering. Elias stepped beside her quietly. "It's learning them." Lena turned sharply. "Why are you helping me?" His black eyes shifted toward the floodwaters. "Because it's changing." The words landed wrong immediately. "How?" "It was never supposed to leave the river." Another explosion shook the cavern. This one different. Closer. Concrete collapsed across the northern bridges. Then soldiers appeared through the dust. Black armor. Flood masks. Automatic rifles. At least 20 of them poured down from a shattered tunnel entrance. Weapons raised instantly toward the listener towering through the broken ceiling above. One soldier shouted into a headset. "Visual confirmation." Another voice crackled back, distorted through static. "Do not engage directly." Too late. One terrified soldier fired. The bullet vanished into the listener's shifting flesh without effect. Then the creature looked down slowly. Every face across its body smiled at once. The soldiers broke instantly. Not physically. Mentally. Rifles clattered onto stone. Several dropped to their knees crying. One began laughing uncontrollably while calling for his mother. Another ripped off his flood mask screaming, "She's alive! She's alive!" and walked directly into the black water. Hands dragged him under immediately. The squad commander shouted desperately, "Fall back! Fall back!" The listener spoke. One sentence. In the commander's dead daughter's voice. And the man put the barrel of his own rifle beneath his chin. Harrow turned Lena away before the shot. "Move!" Finally she ran. The cavern behind them descended into madness. Gunfire. Floodwater. Screaming. The listener climbing upward into Greyhaven, while people willingly followed its voice into the dark water below. Agnes led them through collapsing maintenance tunnels beneath St. Mercy. Ancient pipes burst around them, spraying seawater across rusted walls. Emergency lights flashed weak red through the darkness. Harrow kept looking behind them. What exactly happens if that thing reaches open ocean? Nobody answered immediately, because everyone already knew. The listener would no longer belong to Greyhaven. It would belong to everywhere. Lena nearly slipped as the tunnel floor tilted sharply downward. Where are we going? The primary lock chamber, Agnes said breathlessly. You said the original seal was below the gate. It is. Then why aren't we there? Agnes stopped suddenly. Because ahead of them, the tunnel was flooded. Black water filled the passage from wall to wall. Completely still. Elias stared at it quietly. It's waiting. Harrow aimed the pistol at the water despite knowing how useless it was. Lena looked toward Agnes. How do we get through? The old woman's face had gone pale. We don't. Then something surfaced silently in the flooded tunnel. A woman, floating upright in the black water. Eyes open, skin swollen pale. Lena recognized her instantly. Mrs. Arden, the mother from Building 47. Except now her mouth hung unnaturally wide open. Water poured continuously from inside her throat. Then another body surfaced beside her. Then another. Then dozens. The missing. All floating silently upright in the tunnel. Watching. Elias stepped backward slightly. Even he looked disturbed. The drowned choir. The floating bodies opened their mouths together. And began singing. Lo, ancient. The same melody as the bells beneath the city. The tunnel lights burst one by one. Darkness closed around them. Then the bodies moved. Not swimming. Drifting forward without motion. Harrow fired repeatedly now out of pure panic. Bullets tore through pale flesh uselessly. The drowned kept singing. Agnes grabbed Lena's face hard. Listen carefully. The old woman pressed a rusted iron key into her hand. Cold enough to burn. Your father stole the final seal mechanism before they executed him. Lena stared at the key. He hid it somewhere only blood could open. Where? Agnes looked directly into her eyes. Your childhood home. The drowned choir surged forward suddenly. Bodies slammed against the tunnel walls with horrifying speed. Harrow shouted. Run! They turned and sprinted through collapsing side passages while the singing followed behind them through the dark. Closer, closer, and somewhere above the city. The listener laughed with thousands of human voices as Greyhaven drowned around it. Greyhaven was dying above them. Lena could feel it through the walls. Every distant vibration carried collapse. Buildings falling into floodwaters, bridges snapping apart, underground pressure systems rupturing beneath entire districts. The city sounded like a ship breaking apart in slow motion. And somewhere beyond the tunnels, the listener was still growing. Its voice echoed faintly through the pipes now. Thousands of overlapping human cries blending into one impossible sound. Harrow ran beside Lena through the narrow maintenance corridor, breathing hard. You seriously grew up here? Not here, she gasped. Near the eastern docks. Because this city feels like it was designed by nightmares. Ahead, Agnes limped through ankle-deep water holding the lantern close to her chest. The old woman looked smaller now somehow. Fragile. Exhausted. The drowned choir still followed behind them. Their singing rolled through the tunnels endlessly. Slow. Mournful. Closer every minute. Elias moved silently beside Lena, not touching the ground anymore. She noticed that now. His feet hovered inches above the water. What are you? She whispered. He looked at her carefully. I don't know anymore. The honesty frightened her more than the lies had. Another explosion shook the corridor. Dust burst from overhead pipes. Harrow cursed. Military again? Agnes shook her head weakly. No. Then came a sound none of them expected. A horn. Deep. Mechanical. Massive. Lena stopped immediately. She knew that sound. Harbor evacuation horns. But these were impossible to hear underground unless... The eastern sea wall, she whispered. Harrow looked at her sharply. What about it? She felt cold suddenly. The wall only sounds that alarm if water passes over it. Silence hit hard. Greyhaven's eastern seawall stood nearly 300 feet high, built after the first drowning. If the ocean had crossed it, the city above them was already underwater. Agnes closed her eyes. It's reached the harbor. Elias looked upward almost dreamily. It's calling farther now. Lena turned toward him instantly. What does that mean? He smiled sadly. The listener doesn't use voices to hunt. The tunnel lights flickered violently. All grief sounds the same underwater. The singing behind them stopped. Instantly, every tunnel fell silent. Agnes went pale. No! Harrow slowly raised the pistol again. Why is that worse? Then they heard footsteps. Not shambling. Running. Fast. Something sprinted toward them through the darkness behind the choir tunnels. Lena backed away instinctively. A man burst around the corridor corner soaked in seawater. Federal armor. Flood mask shattered. Bleeding heavily from one shoulder. He nearly collapsed when he saw them. Oh, thank God! Then he saw Elias. And froze. Fear consumed his face instantly. It followed you. Harrow grabbed the soldier before he fell. What happened upstairs? The man laughed weakly. Not sane laughter. They opened the shelters. His breathing became ragged. It knew every name inside. Lena felt sick. How many survivors? The soldier stared at her blankly. There are no survivors. Something moved in the darkness behind him. Fast. The soldier saw it first. His expression broke completely. Then black water erupted from his mouth. Not choking. Pouring. Like his insides had become ocean. Harrow jumped back as the man collapsed, twitching onto the tunnel floor. The body began singing immediately. The drowned choir had found them again. Move! Agnes screamed. They ran. The tunnels narrowed sharply as they climbed toward the eastern districts. Ancient brickwork replaced concrete. Rusted gas lines crossed low ceilings overhead. Lena recognized the route now. Blackwater Lane. Her childhood district. Or what remained of it. Most families abandoned the area years ago after the flood sinkholes started swallowing entire buildings. But her father never left. Even after Elias died. Even after everyone called him insane. Another memory surfaced painfully. Her father boarding shut every mirror in the house after sunset. Never let the water see inside. The corridor ahead finally ended at a rusted maintenance hatch. Agnes pulled it open slowly. Rain exploded downward through the opening. Cold. Violent. Real. They climbed out into Greyhaven. Or what was left of it. Lena stopped breathing. The city was underwater. Entire streets had vanished beneath black floodwater illuminated by flickering emergency lights. Cars floated. Between rooftops. Fires burned across distant districts, reflecting red across the storm clouds above. Military helicopters circled the skyline. Some crashed, burning into flooded buildings mid-flight. Others simply disappeared into fog. And towering above all of it, the listener walked through the drowned city. 300 feet tall now. A moving cathedral of flesh and faces crossing slowly through downtown Greyhaven, while thousands wandered after it willingly into deep water. The thing no longer resembled humanity at all. It resembled memory. Harrow stared in disbelief. How is that possible? Nobody answered, because there was no answer large enough. The listener stopped suddenly far across the city. Its countless faces turned upward toward the storm clouds. Listening. Then all at once, every face smiled. The ocean answered. Beyond the eastern seawall, something enormous moved beneath the waves. Lena felt genuine terror for the first time. Not fear of dying. Fear of understanding. Greyhaven had never trapped the listener. Greyhaven had hidden it. Agnes grabbed her arm urgently. The house. Lena forced herself to move. Blackwater Lane stood partially submerged beneath waist-high floodwater. Street lamps sparked underwater. Windows glowed dimly in abandoned homes despite the citywide blackout. The listener's influence lived here now. Lena's childhood house stood at the end of the street. Exactly unchanged. Dark green paint peeling from the walls. Wooden porch sagging slightly left. And every light inside burning softly warm. Harrow stared. You said nobody lived here. They don't. Rain hammered around them as Lena approached slowly through floodwater. Then the front door creaked open by itself. A familiar voice drifted softly from inside. Lena, her mother, dead 11 years. Agnes whispered urgently behind her. Don't answer. But the house lights glowed brighter. Warm. Safe. Home. And for one impossible moment, Lena wanted nothing more than to walk inside forever. Lena. Her mother's voice drifted warmly from inside the house. Soft. Gentle. Impossible. Rain hammered Blackwater Lane while floodwater swirled around Lena's knees. But the doorway ahead glowed with golden light untouched by the storm. The smell of cinnamon tea floated faintly through the air. Home. Safe. Harrow grabbed her arm immediately. That's not real. Lena barely heard him. Inside the house, she could see movement now. A woman crossing the hallway. Dark hair. Bare feet. Her mother's old blue sweater. Tears burned Lena's eyes instantly. Agnes stepped between her and the porch. Do not go in there. Move. Lena, listen to me. Another voice called from inside. This time deeper. Her father. You're almost out of time. Lena froze. Then Elias appeared in the upstairs window. Not black-eyed. Not drowned. Normal. Smiling gently at her like he had before the river took him. The storm around the house faded strangely quiet. Even the distant screams from the drowning city seemed farther away. The listener wanted her calm. Wanted her willing. Agnes whispered urgently beside her. The house isn't showing you ghosts. Lena looked at her slowly. Then what is it showing me? The old woman's voice shook. What you would surrender the world to keep. Lightning split the sky overhead. And far across flooded Greyhaven, the listener stopped moving. His colossal body turned directly toward Blackwater Lane. Toward Lena. The entire city trembled beneath its attention. Then every face across the creature opened its mouth together. Come home. The floodwater around the street surged instantly. Doors burst open up and down the block. People emerged silently from submerged houses. Dozens. Then hundreds. Greyhaven survivors walking slowly through the water toward Lena's childhood home with blank expressions and river-black eyes. Harrow raised the pistol desperately. We need to move right now. But Lena already understood. The listener didn't want the city anymore. It wanted her. Because her family had sealed it. And blood remembers. Inside the house, her father stepped into the hallway light. Exactly as she remembered him before prison took him away. Tired eyes. Oil-stained hands. And guilt so heavy it bent his posture. Lena, he said softly. Please. She climbed the porch steps before anyone could stop her. Agnes shouted behind her. No! But the moment Lena crossed the doorway, the storm vanished. Silence filled the house. Warm yellow light glowed softly across familiar walls. The old kitchen clock ticked steadily. Rain tapped peacefully against the windows. It smelled exactly like childhood. Her mother stood beside the dining table crying quietly. Elias sat on the staircase smiling nervously. And Thomas Morcant looked at his daughter like a drowning man seeing shore. Lena's voice broke instantly. You killed him. Her father closed his eyes. Yes. The truth landed harder than any lie. Her mother sobbed openly now. Thomas stepped closer carefully. The listener marked Elias first. I thought if it took him willingly, it would spare you. But it didn't. No. Pain hollowed his face completely. It never stops wanting. Lena looked around slowly. You're dead. Yes. Then what is this? Thomas glanced toward the windows. Outside, faintly beneath the quiet rain, thousands of voices whispered. The listener keeps echoes of people it consumes. Elias stood from the stairs. We're what it remembers. The house flickered suddenly. For one horrifying instant the illusion broke. The walls became rotten and flooded. The ceiling sagged with black mold. Water filled every room ankle-deep. And her family, their bodies were swollen pale things drifting beneath dark water. Then the illusion returned instantly. Warmth. Light. Home. Thomas looked terrified now. It's getting stronger. Outside the house, the drowned citizens had reached the porch. They stood silently beyond the windows staring inward. Waiting. Lena looked at her father. How do I stop it? He hesitated too long. And she understood immediately. No. Tears filled his eyes. The final lock requires blood willingly given. Her mother cried harder. Elias stepped forward quietly. I tried to tell him not to choose me. Lena backed away, shaking her head. No. Thomas's voice cracked completely. If the seal fails entirely, the ocean wakes. Lightning flashed beyond the windows, and suddenly Lena saw it. Far beyond Greyhaven's drowned skyline, shapes moving beneath the sea. Massive, ancient. More sleeping things turning slowly beneath black water. The listener had only been one of them. The first. Her father stepped toward her desperately. You still have a choice. No, Lena whispered. You made sure I never did. The house shook violently. Outside, the listener approached through the flooded streets, towering over buildings now. Its countless faces pressed eagerly toward the home. Hungry, expectant. Lena understood then. The creature didn't merely consume people. Preserved them. A perfect prison made from memory. Eternal grief feeding eternal hunger. She looked at Elias. Were you alone all this time? His smile trembled. No. That answer hurt worst of all. The illusion around the house began collapsing completely now. Wallpaper peeled away into soaked decay. The warm lights flickered into deep-sea blue. The drowned citizens outside began singing. The bells beneath the city answered. Thomas Morcant fell to his knees. I'm sorry. Lena stared at the family she had wanted back for half her life. Then she turned toward the front door. Harrow and Agnes waited outside in rising floodwater. The listener loomed directly overhead now. Its enormous body blocked the storm itself. Faces shifted endlessly across its flesh. Thousands of stolen memories staring down at her. And among them, her own face had already begun appearing. The creature knew the ending before she did. Agnes held out the rusted iron key with shaking hands. The lock chamber is below the house. Lena took the key silently. Harrow grabbed her wrist hard. There has to be another way. She looked at him sadly. If there was, my father would have found it. The listener bent lower over the street. Hundreds of mouths opened together. Stay! The word shook windows apart. Floodwater surged upward violently around the house. Lena stepped toward the cellar doors beneath the porch, then paused. She looked back once more at Elias standing in the doorway. Not drowned now, just tired, like a brother waiting at the end of a long storm. I missed you, she whispered, his eyes filled with tears. I know. Then Lena descended into darkness. Below the house, beneath Greyhaven, beneath the drowned bells and the black river and the ancient sleeping sea, the final lock waited. And far above the city, the ocean listened.